When making a villain that the audience follows for the entire series, it is extremely important to make sure that the audience gets to understand the villain and have them go through a character arc truly worth remembering. And I do believe that Kohei Horikoshi did that in spades when it came to Tomura Shigaraki. Welcome back to the Best of Villain series, where we talk about the best villains that anime and manga have to offer. Today, we are talking about the man obsessed with destroying the entire world of heroes, Tomura Shigaraki. Set up to be the next big head to lead the villains against the heroes in the world of My Hero Academia, Shigaraki is forced to go on his own journey of reflection to come out as Destruction Incarnate. This version of Shigaraki went toe-to-toe with the strongest that the Heroes Association has to offer, and almost won. With a touch of his fingers, he could disintegrate anything that he chooses. His power is truly not to be reckoned with. But to understand that version of Shigaraki, we first have to understand who he was before, that being Tenko Shimura. This will have spoilers for all of My Hero. Tenko Shimura grew up in an abusive household where his father would lash out physically and verbally to Tenko if he broke the rule of the household. No talking about superheroes. Tenko's grandmother is Nana Shimura, the mentor to the #1 hero in the world, All Might, and the 7th user of a quirk called the One for All quirk. Nana was extremely busy fighting crime, and because of that was always away from Tenko's father, and he grew to hate and resent heroes. When Tenko was 5, he was beaten by his father and berated for calling Nana Shimura his grandmother and breaking their rule. Tenko went off crying into a corner when his dog and his sister came out to comfort him, and that was when a quirk that was artificially given to him by a man named Zen Shigaraki, better known as All for One, manifested. A quirk is the powers that most people in My Hero Academia have. The powers can range between being rather useless upon first glance to something that has extremely destructive capabilities. And the quirk that All for One gave Tenko was called Decay, an ability that causes anything he touches to disintegrate. Tenko then proceeded to kill his entire family by accident. One by one, they all perished at his hands. This caused him to break mentally, as it would for any 5-year-old. He then wandered the streets, begging to be saved by a superhero. But much when he was being abused and begging then, much to when his quirk went off and he was begging then, no one came aside from the man that orchestrated the whole thing, All for One, who swooped in and adopted Tenko. Tenko was given the hands of every family member that he killed, and now he wears them on his body. He used his hands to kill his family, so now he too must be oppressed by their hands. These hands keep Tenko in check as a reminder that he is no hero, that he must feed into the dark despair he found himself in. He was then renamed by All for One, and thus Tomura Shigaraki was born. All for One's goal was to bathe Shigaraki in darkness. His desire was to turn him into a vessel for himself. In doing so, All for One gave Shigaraki the All for One quirk that allows him to steal quirks. Doing so and allowing Shigaraki to develop by being forced into direct combat with high-ranking heroes, especially as the series goes on, so that he can grow in strength and in his repertoire, so he can ensure domination. That's why he manufactured everything in Shigaraki's life. He needed to make sure that he had someone who could be molded into the ultimate villain. All for One removed Tomura's previous quirk, he encouraged his father's strict ways, and he made sure that he gave Shigaraki the new quirk of Decay, also that he could set up this extreme tragedy that Shigaraki went through as a child. All for the sake of developing him into the ultimate form of carnage and destruction. There is a ginormous creature that was a loyal servant to All for One, named Gigantomachia. He would only listen to All for One, and part of Shigaraki's journey to become a leader to the villains and take the true place of All for One was to tame Gigantomachia. Shigaraki then meets with the close doctor to All for One, who at this point in the story is sealed away in prison. After defeating and taking over the Metahuman Liberation Army, a group that was attempting to take down the League of Villains, he is recognized by Gigantomachia of being a true successor to All For One. He achieves this by regaining his memories when Redestro, the leader of the Metahuman Liberation Army, destroyed Shigaraki's hands, causing him to awaken. After that, Shigaraki has intense identity issues, as he mentions in his fight with the United States #1 hero, Stars and Stripes, that he is Tomura, but at the same time he is not. Now the man whose identity was already being tampered with is being tampered with again, consistently pushing Shigaraki down as a confused rampage of destruction. All For One even mentions that there will no longer be the two of them, just a new person altogether. All For One created the hands that we see on Shigaraki, made from the corpses of his family members, something that is truly and utterly demonic and twisted. He did so as an oppressive tactic, constantly pushing Shigaraki down a dark road and making sure he does not act up again by trying to keep him in the anguish that he experienced on that day. Throughout the story, Shigaraki evolves past the hands, and they no longer accompany him. However, All For One eventually takes over Shigaraki's body, and when he does that, the hand returns on his mouth, as All For One was the true mastermind over Shigaraki's life falling apart. The true hand that oppressed him was not his father, as All For One quite literally went out of his way to influence that as well, but All For One himself. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of how All For One was handled at the end. I'm never thrilled over a character manipulating everything in the background, as I think it takes away part of the character being manipulated. These series of unfortunate events being scripted instead of authentic experiences make it feel lessened, since they feel less like Shigaraki's true reactions and more the reactions that All For One wanted him to feel. That being said, I do think that All For One's mentorship and relationship with Shigaraki throughout the series is still a master case of supreme manipulation and craft, showing All For One's cunning sense of strategic decisions. Shigaraki is someone that blames who he is and everything that happened to him on the current Heroes Association, and sees the lack of hero in his life at each pivotal moment of his life as a failure of the structure that was meant to protect everyone. There is one person that represents the current structure the most, and that is All Might. All Might, for the first part of the story, is the #1 hero, and considered the symbol of peace. If you take out the symbol of peace, then those who believe in the symbol begin to crumble. All Might and Shigaraki have a pretty interesting duality when it comes to what it means to be a hero. All Might inspires a lot of people in the My Hero universe, and even though he suffers intense injuries due to a previous fight with All For One, he still continues to fight for as long as he can. Eventually, All Might fights All For One again and is unable to continue as the #1 hero from the point onwards in the story. At that point in the story, All Might tries to figure out how he can still be there for everyone even though he can't fight anymore. Meanwhile, Shigaraki goes through a journey of what it means to be a hero through his own way. Shigaraki eventually realizes that he wants to be a hero for villains, much like how All Might is a hero for, well, heroes. He wants to become the symbol that All Might was. Of course, this point is also focused with Deku, as Deku is also trying to become that as well, as he is All Might's successor, but the reason why I'm talking about All Might with Shigaraki is that Deku was not considered the de facto #1 hero in the story at that point. This was Endeavor. Shigaraki became the symbol of villains and was the #1 villain at that point. All Might suffering when he realized he could not do anything after being unable to sustain his powers is the mirror to Shigaraki's journey of not being able to do anything in the situations he was in during the beginning of the story. Just kind of a mirrored situation, reverse, where Shigaraki ends up gaining the powers when he was not able to do anything previously, while All Might loses all the powers when he was able to do everything previously. Shigaraki's goal was to make a world without All Might, and when All Might is removed, what is there left? Shigaraki can pinpoint all of his suffering on one man in hopes to destroy this sense of justice, but All Might living against his fight in All for One and living for the rest of the series proves Shigaraki's conviction of wanting to kill All Might wrong narratively, as the symbol of peace won't falter, and becoming a symbol of terror will not triumph in the end. Now, I would also be doing a disservice to this discussion of Shigaraki as a character if I did not also talk about his relationship with our main character, Izuku Midoriya, or Deku. Deku and Shigaraki start off in a very similar position in the story. Both are the chosen successors of a decades-long feud between two quirks that manifest itself in the story as good versus evil, that being the One for All quirk that Deku has, that he got from All Might, and the All for One quirk that One for All gave Shigaraki a little bit later into the story. We see a lot of Deku in Shigaraki's past when they were kids, and I think that we get to see such a young age for Shigaraki to show that Deku and Shigaraki could have been in swapped positions. Shigaraki could have gone and become a hero if not for All for One's involvement. Shigaraki knows this and even pleads for Deku to be the hero, to save him finally from this corrupted horror he's found himself in. He hated for so long the idea of superheroes because he could not be saved on that day, because to him, he drew the unlucky straw. There was no hero to save him at the time of crisis, that he came to the conclusion that the hero system that was built as the foundation for society was ineffective. And not only is there some truth to that, no matter how hard everyone tries, you would not be able to save everyone in peril even if you tried your hardest. But Deku's consistent dedication to improving and not giving up, and climbing his way up to the tiers in the My Heroverse, proves that Shigaraki ultimately was wrong in his way of thinking. Just because you can't save everyone does not mean you should not try to use everything at your disposal, even at the cost of breaking your bones, which Deku is no stranger to. As Deku fights Shigaraki, All for One takes over, and the thing that he is most worried about is whether or not Shigaraki is still part of his consciousness. Deku is being righteous to a fault. If Deku cannot save one person, despite having all of the powers of the previous users of One for All, then he cannot consider himself to be a worthwhile hero, especially someone who is begging to be saved. Shigaraki still wants to be saved after all of these years, and he knew that the one person who would do it would be the one person who understood his pain. As Deku was chosen by fate to fight in an endless cycle of fighting between the two sides, Deku understands Shigaraki and his plight. They are both supposed to be these representatives of their sides. Shigaraki wants to be a beacon of light to the villains, which is why he even told Deku to tell Spinner from the League of Villains that Shigaraki never stopped fighting to the bitter end. Spinner was seeing Shigaraki as this beacon of light. Shigaraki inspired many others who had a similar mindset to him. Shigaraki blames his unfortunate hand he was dealt by All for One for his misfortune in his life, but he attempts to truly help those who were a part of his family, something that Deku understood, especially growing up, loving heroes that inspired him to become a hero even without any powers. These two are strong polar opposites that define the series for its question of what it means to be a hero, and do villains deserve to be inspired like the heroes do. In terms of character comparisons, I think the one that is most synonymous with Shigaraki is the ties to his family, and really the concept of family in general. Shigaraki is, for about half the series, wears hands all over his body. These hands are the remaining parts of his family that he murdered. All for One gave these hands to him as a constant reminder of what happened and to ensure that his fury never relented. The palm on his hand is from his father as he tried to stop a young Tenko from killing everyone. But of course, to a young child who faced constant abuse in that moment, he saw that as an attack again, and so the palm is a constant reminder to him about the abuse he had endured and the traumatic events that got him to where he is. During the final fight between Shigaraki and the top heroes, Shigaraki's body started to mutate, and as it was going under constant stress and pain, his body underwent a transformation that included his family starting to grow out of him. It started when he started to contemplate why the heroes can continue on with such hope despite their dire situation. His body ended up forming hands covering each part of his body. What I find really interesting about this is it's as if his own family came out of his body to cover any part of his internal organs, almost as if they are trying to protect him from any harm. Despite Shigaraki constantly suffering due to his trauma, it is as if he is using that trauma as a defense mechanism to shield him from his lack of identity, with the protection of manifesting through his body transforming. As we talked about earlier, All For One really did a number on Shigaraki's identity, and after he started to try to understand who Tomura Shigaraki really is, he kept getting pulled in every different direction, so it is easy to fall back onto something that you already know, including Shigaraki's current identity. Everything about Shigaraki comes back to the question of why he could not have been saved that day. That day was that day that Tenko Shimura's life stopped, and despite Shigaraki trying to play face and move on from it, he can't. His family was all that he had, and then he got, in an exchange, a man who was hell-bent on making Shigaraki a miniature version of himself, and an extremely awful human being. I cannot imagine that All For One was a great father. After All For One is imprisoned, Shigaraki forms the League of Villains. Shigaraki truly wants to be there for all of the core members, especially as they all stuck around with him. Dabi, Toga, Spinner, Kurogiri, Twice, Magne, and Mr. Compress are the ones that we truly spend the most time with. He shows extreme affection and a form of close protection to all of them. Shigaraki really wanted to become a part of a true family, and if he could not get that, at least surround himself with those that were also as lost as he was. To Shigaraki, he truly did care for his new family, and his desire to protect his family was nothing short of, at the very least, respectable. Shigaraki's main quirk is called Decay. As mentioned earlier, it can disintegrate anything it touches. Having this since he was a kid caused him to view himself as the Destroyer, a one-shot kill that can take down even the mightiest of heroes. This, of course, gets to his head as he is even described as a man-child in the beginning of the series. Eventually, he regains his memories of his past and undergoes some experiments thanks to All For One's doctor and is able to control where his decay affects. Previously, when he had no memories, his rage and disdain for the heroes were not truly understood by Shigaraki himself, and him gaining control over his decay ability symbolizes the inner peace he found himself and a stronger understanding of who he truly is as a person, with the palm on his face, representing his father, in his final attempts to stop Tenko, being removed, symbolizing him coming to terms with his inner turmoil of killing his father with pure bloodlust after seeing his father's authoritative hand attempt to stop him. Shigaraki is not only a fantastic character, but also a tragic one, that truly tackles the idea of the constant fear that every superhero has of not being able to save everyone. That's all I got. If you like what you heard, consider liking and subscribing, as it would mean a lot. Other than that, I am out of here. Okay, bye.